everybody, welcome back to a cozy outside corner. I did just film this video once before and I have had to move outside locations, and I filmed it over there and it was a bit too close to the road and the cars were a little bit loud, so I'm going to try again here. And today I'll be talking about The Yelling Stones by Oskar Jenson. Is that right? Yes. Which I requested from Hotkey Books because they sent me a list of books that were coming out in April, so this book only just recently came out. And this one had Viking in the title, so I was like, yes, I want to read that book. I've been wanting to read a book about Vikings for so long because I love movies about Vikings and shows about Vikings and stuff, but I'd never read a book about Vikings, so I was super excited to read this book, and I kind of read it pretty much straight away. I did talk about it in my March wrap-up as well, so I did mention it a little bit there, but I did want to do kind of an in-depth review on it because there's definitely quite a lot I have to say on this book, and it definitely surprised me in quite a few areas. So basically, to start out with, this book is about this girl called Astrid who lives in this town. Well, basically, actually, originally it's set in a real place. In Denmark, there are these stones, and this book kind of revolves around these stones. I mean, you can kind of tell from the title, and they're actually real stones in a real place, and I thought that was really, really cool and definitely added like an extra element to it. So if you do read this book, I would recommend kind of looking into that and looking it up first, because yeah, I did that and it was really, really great to kind of know that it was kind of based in a real place. But anyway, so she lives in this place, and you know, her family are, well, her father is a king, and her brothers, she has two or three brothers, and she's kind of the only girl and the youngest of the bunch. And so basically, this other boy, this main boy here, his name is Leif, and he comes to the town, and it's quite a lot about him and these kind of visions that he has. He basically has these visions, but he can't really explain them, and he's not quite sure what they mean, but basically he feels like something bad is coming, and he kind of warns them about it, and they take this quite seriously, and they think, right, okay, we need to kind of be prepared, and something's coming, and the two of them kind of head out into the woods to kind of, I guess, to discover what it was. And that beginning bit of the book was so much fun, and Leif's backstory was incredible. I loved his story. He was great. He was definitely my favourite character in the book. He was fantastic. So yeah, they've headed now. There's witches and there's trolls and there's wolves and there's dwarves mentioned. There's so much things mentioned in this beginning half of the book that is so magical, and I loved that. It was very adventurous, and then the book kind of takes a turn, which I did like, but it was definitely unexpected, I felt, but it was fine, it was good, but it surprised me, which I guess is a good thing. But it kind of got onto the subject of religion and discussing the different religions, and I'd never really read a book that kind of focused on religion, so that definitely was new to me, but it was very, very interesting. This book left me thinking for, you know, quite a few days after reading it on the subjects that it had mentioned, which I really appreciated. That it kind of made me think. I like books that can make me think, and especially for, you know, this book, I'd never looked at it and thought this is a book that's going to make me think, so I definitely underestimated the book. I kind of just thought it was going to be a fun, you know, adventurous read, and it definitely kind of started to become a bit more than that, but I felt like the parts where it kind of, I don't want to give away why the religion was being discussed, because I think that kind of ruins the plot line of the story, but the parts where it was being discussed, I felt like, even though I enjoyed them and they were interesting, it kind of took a little bit away from the magic, for me personally, that the beginning of the book had. So the beginning of the book for me was probably about 4 stars, but then it kind of, I felt, trailed off a little bit, and I would give the book as an overall 3.5 stars, which I will mention, as I do in most of my reviews, I give 3.5. It's definitely a good rating for me. I know a lot of people who I've heard give 3.5 stars for a book, and they think that means the book is bad. That is definitely not the case for me. 3.5 is a book that I enjoyed. It's a solid book that I had a good time with, and you know, it definitely has some great qualities, but there was a few things that I had a problem with. Speaking of which, I wish there would have been a bit more character development with the female character here, Astrid, because I definitely felt a lot of a better connection with the male character than the female, just because he had kind of a backstory and definitely so much more of a story to him than the female did, whereas I felt like she was the main character, but not really. It was a bit of a weird one. And as well, the place where they lived, I wish would have been described a little bit better, whereas the outside world was described wonderfully, and I loved that. So I kind of didn't, I think that's the problem I had. When they were inside the place that they lived, it just wasn't described as well, so I wasn't as excited, whereas when they were in the outside world, I could imagine it so much more vividly than I could when they were inside. So I think that I enjoyed those parts of the book more, and I feel like that happened a lot more in the beginning of the book than the second half of the book. But yeah, overall I really did enjoy it, and it definitely surprised me. They talked about Thor and Odin and Valhalla and all stuff like that, which I was so excited about. Every time, you know, something like that was mentioned, I was really excited, because there was the kind of themes that I wanted when going into this book, and I definitely liked the end. If there was to be a sequel to this book, I would definitely read it, because the end was very interesting, and regarding the stones, it definitely made me want to look into them more and look up kind of a bit more history behind them, because the ending of this book definitely makes you want to look into that, which I thought was fantastic. I mean, if a book can make you want to look into something more, then I think that's great, and especially as well with it being a middle grade book, it might make younger readers want to look into something, which would then be like a historical thing, which is great. And yeah, so it was really, really interesting. I liked the ending. I feel like some people might either think yes for the ending, or I don't know about the ending, but for me, I actually really liked the ending. And like I say, if there's a sequel, which I don't know if there's going to be a sequel, but I feel like there maybe could be, or there doesn't have to be, but its option is maybe there, I guess. And if there were to be, I would definitely pick it up and read it, because I definitely would want to know further. Yeah, so overall I really enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars, and like I say, I would read a next one if there was one. And yeah, so this is a great kind of adventurous middle grade book, and it definitely has some different themes with religion in there, so if you're kind of interested in reading a book about that, then I would recommend it. And yeah, it did have the Viking fun in there, which I really, really enjoyed. So yes, that was my thoughts on the Yellowstones. Let me know down in the comments below if you had read it, or if you have any Viking book recommendations, because I had a lot of fun with that one. I would definitely want to read more Viking books in the future. And yeah, until then guys, I will see you next time. Thumbs up if you enjoyed this review, and I'll see you then. Goodbye!